How tall do you think that is?
At least 5 foot for sure.
Yeah, it's probably 5.5, almost 6 foot tall.
I'm 5'8", you know.
So here's the winter rye. This is all, you know, from, I seeded this stuff in.
With my shoes on, I'm probably at least 5'9".
Yeah, I seeded this stuff in last September when the soybeans were starting to turn yellow. You can't even see the soybean stubble in here anymore. But at the ground, it's just bare soil. So we're gonna broadcast the beans in here. We're gonna do a little bit of buckwheat down there on that end, and that'll be later, you know, that'll be brassicas in the summer. Look at that, you can even see the corn in there still. See it, Dan?
Yeah.
That stuff is almost as tall as the corn. That corn wasn't that tall, but still, some tall stuff. Well, my dad's just going to get the drag right now. So we're gonna crush all this down with the drag. You can see when you get to a random spot in here, I mean, we got pretty good spacing of the beans. Doesn't really look too thick or too thin, so that's good. See them all down there? I mean, it's amazing how good of a cover crop this rye is. It just suppresses all the weeds. Just completely bare soil underneath here, pretty much. And then when we crush all this down, we're gonna spray it, obviously, and you know, that's gonna really help suppress the weeds too, because it's gonna be like a mulch mat, just like a green carpet on top of the seeds. And that's why this works, is because, you know, if you were just to throw the beans out on bare soil exposed to the sun, you wouldn't get germination unless you had like 2 inches of rain. But with this, I mean, it's not supposed to rain for a week. You know, next weekend's the next rain chances, but we just, you know, got time, and, you know, we got to get this seed in the ground so it can eventually grow. You can see the first pass does about 50% of the crushing, and it takes about 3 or 4 more passes to completely get it down flat. Obviously, if you had like a crimper or even a cultipacker, does a better job, but you know, the drag is just so much easier to transport over here on the, you know, trailer and such. But it's gonna take probably, this is probably about not quite a half an acre, probably like a third of an acre, half acre at most. It's probably gonna take, my guess, about 30 minutes to completely crush it. So it takes a little bit, but not terrible. You can see there is what one pass does. Like I said, we got some corn stalks still in here from last year too. You can see them right there. Once you knock all this rye down, look at how much material and how much like tonnage there is just covering up the soil here. And When you peel it back, I mean, look at it right there, that's a seed. Look at how much stuff there is covering that up. Obviously when you spray it, it'll start to dry down, and you know, then the more soil will be exposed, but it's just amazing. This is supposed to really help the soil. Granted, this is pretty good soil already. It's just the easiest thing to do with limited you know, resources, and it's kind of a pain to get the tractor over here. So we have the tractor over here today. The other spot's gonna have to get disced up because that's a brand new spot. It was basically just grass like that. We sprayed it, and now we're gonna rip it all up. But in the future, that area is just all gonna be winter rye, you know, seeded into there in the fall, and then we can just no-till everything with just the ATV drag cart sprayer. We don't have to drive the tractor over here. But yeah, let's take a look at the seeds down here. See them all right there? Well, it's all crushed down, as you can tell. We're gonna be hooking up the disc here in a little bit. The other spot you haven't seen yet, I'm gonna disc up the other spot when my dad comes back and sprays this. And then the other spot is all gonna be worked up. It's right behind their house, actually, kind of like our food plots. That we're just gonna broadcast by hand too into soybeans, but we'll either disc it in a little bit or drag it in, you know, to work the seeds in a little bit into the soil, because they can't be exposed right on top unless there's rye or something covering them up like that. So I'll see you over there in a bit. Well, right here's the other area. This area is right around an acre in size. So with this area and the other area combined, we got about 1.5 acres of soybeans this year. So let's get discing. You can see I sprayed it all off. There's a little bit of milkweed coming back, but that's about it. Should work up decent, but there'll be still a lot of sod. This is the first time this ground has been worked in a while, as you can tell. Well, we just got it all seeded. We're going to be disking them in because it didn't work up that good. My original plan was just to drag them in. Usually in looser soil you wouldn't want to disc in the beans because it'll put them too deep. But this soil isn't worked up the best, so we might drag after to kind of level out all the humps and bumps, because we don't plan on tilling this in the future. We just plan on doing no-till with the rye next year. My dad seeded that whole side, and I seeded this side. So we'll see which whose look better. I'm sure they're gonna look about the same, but starting to see less beans after we go over it a few times. Might have to go over everything twice again just to kind of work everything in good. I don't really want to leave anything exposed because we're not supposed to get any rain for about a week, so it'd be nice to get most everything in underneath the soil. Well, out here for another update. on these two plots. This is obviously the no-till plot, as you can tell. Everything's starting to pop up pretty good, but it's literally July 3rd, and look at how small these beans are. Mainly just because, you know, like I said, they didn't germinate until about 3 to 4 weeks after planting, basically, because of the lack of rain. Plus, I have noticed when doing soybeans and brass, because whenever you no-till, you usually get slower growth from the beginning. Definitely slower growth. Just simply because, you know, the ground isn't worked up, it's not loose, and the root has a little bit tougher time probably getting in, and especially these soybeans, they were just sitting right on top of the soil. But usually on a normal year, and if you get good rains for the first couple weeks after planting, this method usually turns out pretty good. Like last year we no-tilled beans here. We might have planted like 1 or 2 weeks earlier, and they were waist to almost, you know, they were definitely waist high by the end of the growing season. There was tons of pods. So these things are going to have pods, but they're not going to have nearly as many as I would like them to. I'll take you over to the tilled plot. That plot looks so much better. Those soybeans popped up right away because they were worked into the ground, and the ground had some moisture when we planted, so they popped up right away, and you know, are gonna. Good thing that's the bigger plot. That's about a 1 acre plot, where this is about maybe 1/3 of an acre right here. So I'll take you over to the bigger plot. Well, here we are. You can see this stuff's about shin high. There is some thicker and thinner spots. I don't know what's causing that. Maybe those ones was just thicker, or maybe there's just less nutrients in the soil right there, because we didn't fertilize any of this. I think next year we're going to start fertilizing here. We haven't fertilized at all on this property. Yeah, this is going to be a heck of a lot of food here. I did spray this. It would have been, I believe, probably close to 2 weeks ago by now. You can see like there's a few weeds in here that survived, but mostly everything killed off pretty good. There was a lot of milkweed in here, and just grapevines. These grapevines look like they killed and now they're coming back. Here's a milkweed. But yeah, I'm really pleased with the results here. First year plot, you know, all the previous years it's just been grass and goldenrod and stuff. There was a few small trees in here, and came in here and just brush hogged it all and sprayed it once and ripped it up with the disc and planted, tilled in the beans. We probably could have planted corn. You know, I was thinking about doing that, but maybe next year we'll broadcast some corn and till that in. I'll probably do one more update in the video just to get the no-till plot further along, just so you guys can see how that turns out. This plot's going to turn out really good, as you can tell, but I don't really know about the other plot yet. You can see I got a really good kill on the milkweed here. This milkweed is pretty hard to kill too, because it's usually got a pretty good root base established. All this. Nice and thick. In about a couple weeks, this whole plot will be canopied over. Even in these thinner spots, it'll be pretty big. Not seeing any browse at all, because beans over there, beans across the road, beans everywhere. So yeah, I'll see you in a few more weeks, I guess. Well, here we are, back out to the no-till soybean plot here. They're looking pretty good considering what they looked like last time I saw them. They've really grown. Last time I was out here, there was just a few of them that were up, because like I said, we had like 3 weeks of drought, and it was already dry when we planted. So they didn't, like 99% of them, or 90% of them didn't germinate until like 3 to 3.5 weeks after planting. So that's why they're so far behind. The biggest ones are just starting to flower out. See that? Most beans are waist high by now, like that field right there. So these beans will be really green going into the fall. They'll be, you know, They'll probably be green all the way up to the first frost, honestly, at this point. They're only about shin high, but not showing any nutrients deficiencies at all. We didn't fertilize this plot or the tilled plot. I'll take you there next. That plot I haven't even seen yet. I'm sure it looks beautiful compared to this plot because those ones were tilled into the ground and they germinated right away. So those are probably close to knee to thigh high by now. Anyways, some deer browse in here, but not much considering, you know, there's a big bean field there and tons of beans that way. So there's plenty of beans out here for them deer to eat, but come this winter when these are the only beans, we're gonna have a ton of deer over here. This is only about a half acre here, and the 1 acre plot is behind the house over that way. So yeah, and I just planted a little bit of brassicas on the far side of the plot there. No tilled them into the buckwheat because during the fall a lot of the deer bed back in here and they come and work their way this way towards the road. And yeah, so I'm really happy with the results so far. I mean, it's super dry. A lot of ag beans around here are really drying up, you know, also the corn too. But this being no-till, this ground hasn't been worked since over 2 years ago. Honestly, that's pretty amazing. Here's all the rye. This stuff grew amazing. This ground here on this property is just amazing. We haven't fertilized this plot in 3 years, and it's not even showing a nutrients deficiency at all. And it probably produced, yeah, I don't know what beans yield. I think on average for Wisconsin, it's like 60 or something. They looked pretty good last year, a lot better than they do this year. They probably yielded at least 40 to 50 bushels last year, and the year before that we had tons of brassicas, and it just doesn't seem like we ever have to fertilize these plots. I'm never going to fertilize them until we start seeing nutrient, you know, deficiency. The potassium, you know, around the edge of the leaves starts to get yellow. But this rye too, I mean, it was 5 to almost 6 feet high in here, and you know, in late May. So that's by far the tallest and thickest rye we've ever grown. Look at how thick this stuff is, you know, just holding in that moisture. Wow, that ground is cold. Like, I know it's later in the afternoon now, but I bet you could have came out here, you know, today was 90 degrees. I bet you it would have been pretty cool. I mean, that's literally like cold. That's amazing. This is the last update in the video. I'll probably do an update on this plot later this, you know, late August, early September maybe. There'll definitely be updates of this plot this winter, you know, and all the bucks hitting it and stuff. So we usually don't hunt here too much just because it's such a small area. Plus in the wintertime, the bucks and the deer in general come from a mile away over that way. Nothing really beds here during daytime. They just come here at night, feed, and then go back. It actually looks like there might be a deer up in that field right there. Can't see it on my phone camera, but it looks like a little brown thing out there. Anyways, I'll take you over to the tilled plot up that way. Well, here we are. Looks really good. This stuff is actually starting to produce pods now. Doesn't quite look as good as the neighbor's farmer, like the farmer's field. That stuff is probably well over waist high, but looks really good. It's about thigh high, maybe knee high in some of the smaller spots. Look at that. Oops. Bunch of pods coming. So you can see there was a few gaps in here because we just broadcasted this by hand after working it up with the disc. So there's a few spots in here. I actually came in here, it would have been probably almost a month, well, maybe like 3 weeks ago. There wasn't any weeds here when I broadcasted the brassicas. Here's a brassica coming up, and here's some other ones. See how small that is? It looks just like these weeds around it. Here's a purple top turnip. There's a forage rape or kale. So there'll be some brassicas in here mixed amongst these weeds. But the main plot is the soybeans. This is going to last hopefully a long time. Drawing all the deer from that big woods over there this winter. And then obviously in the thinner areas, the beans are starting to bush out more like they normally do. And then And the thick areas, like right here, they're growing, you know, just more straight up. Let's see what it looks like on this side. My dad planted this side, I planted that side. And really, broadcasting them by hand is really, really fast and efficient. Just throw them in a bucket, toss them out. I mean, we planted this whole plot in probably only about 10 minutes. But working it up with the disc is what took forever because it was such, you know, this was a first year food plot. Originally, I was gonna maybe seed rye into here and then make this a no-till plot like the other one in future years, but I think we're gonna continue to, we have to drive the tractor about 10 miles down the road or so, but next year I think I want to try corn here and on one of these sides at least, or maybe closer to the road right there, and just, you know, continue to work this up a few more years before we, if we ever convert this into a no-till plot, because I mean, no-till is great if you don't have equipment and everything, but if you have the equipment, I mean, tilling is always more reliable, but you know, you take the chance of, you know, drying out the ground and destroying organic matter and whatever, but the no-till works almost as good. I mean, if we would have had a normal year, not so much drought and dryness in June, that plot would have looked almost as good, maybe not quite as big and as tall, but in all reality, the no-till is definitely the way to go. If you're limited on resources and time, it's actually faster too. So we'll see what happens here. Can't wait to see what this plot looks like this winter. This is the heavy deer trail this winter was like right along here, going to the food plot up that way. You can see there's definitely a little bit more browse here on the edge, so they're still walking through in this same area, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, like I said, about 1 acre soybeans here, about a half acre up that way, so this is going to be an awesome winter out here. You can see here's a corn plant. Saw one up over that way. Corn will grow broadcast, so that's what we're going to try next year, I think, a little bit. Not the whole plot, but some of it we'll try. So you can see there's a few higher and lower spots out here. See, it's a little bit lower there and almost waist high right there. So maybe there is a little bit of a nutrients deficiency out here, or maybe these beans, I don't know what would be causing it to be so much shorter right here and then like waist high right there almost. So anyways, it's gonna produce really well, and I'm super excited for this fall and this winter out here. So yeah, thanks for sticking around to the end. Hope you enjoyed this video and the kind of comparison between these two plots. Very similar soils, just you know, the lack of rain kind of screwed up the no-till plot, but I guess every year is not the same, so we're going to continue to keep that as a no-till plot so we can kind of compare. Maybe next year we'll put some brassicas up here too, but we could do a lot of different things, honestly. So yeah, thanks for watching. There'll be more videos coming soon.